Freedom lives here in the moment.
Hi, welcome to Toussaint Warrior Trials. My name is Ade Toussaint Richardson, and this is a podcast where I interview various types of people who share about some of the struggles that they've had to overcome in life and the steps that they've taken to overcome these things. In today's episode, I was joined with Francis Dimayuga, who shares some of the struggles that he's had to overcome. So, hope you enjoy the show. Hey, Francis, how are you doing?
So far, so good, man.
I asked you to do this podcast probably like a week ago. You're a guy that, I've always thought of as, helps everyone to feel included. And, you're really good with kind of set in the a community feeling. And for those that don't know, well, everybody that you and I are at the same Jiu Jitsu school,
Yep.
and you always set a really good tone of making the newcomers feel welcome and creating a community vibe and you're always posting really interesting stuff, and also you're a competitor as well,
Yeah.
in about the same age as me. I think I'm 46. Are you 46 or?
Now I'm 48. Got your beef a couple of
Oh,
years.
wow. Yeah. So I feel worse now because you're competing like crazy. But I thought, to reach out to you, and you were gracious enough to accept the invitation. So welcome to Toussaint Warrior Trials.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was this is definitely the first podcast I've actually been on, so this is new for me as well in terms of being in this type of format. But thank you so much for all the kind words. I mean, in terms of the community piece, I think I was always been the person who always want if I was the person coming into a new situation. I think it'd be great if I had someone to kind of pull me aside and kind of show me how things are, because a lot of the times, everyone is just so busy doing their own thing. Sometimes people forget if a new person comes into any situation, it doesn't have to be jujitsu,
Yeah.
right? And they kind of forget about that. And sometimes people just forget like how it is to be coming in, being like the new person,
Yeah.
right? And then, and I always felt that, I want to just pay this forward because there have been some great people along my journey
Hmm.
that were very kind to me when I was starting out. And I kind of wanted to pay that forward by doing that to other folks. And I just feel like it just, provides a good, as soon as someone comes in, someone says hello to me and actually remembers my name. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so bad with names, so I don't remember anyone's name. But so why don't we give like let the audience know just a brief encapsulated version of, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, my name is Francis Dimayuga. I am 48 years old, as we just talked about 5 seconds ago. I'm a former corporate executive. I am now a stay-at-home dad. I'm also a husband, father, boy dad, right? Also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. And as you were saying before, an aspiring, Masters competitor slash hopefully one day Masters world champion. And that's kind of
Yeah.
what my life revolves around at the current moment. So I think that succinctly kind of puts everything together in terms of what I'm currently doing now.
Cool. I mean, that sounds
Yeah,
amazing to
yeah.
yeah, to be able to really commit the time to your kids and be available there, and also to do what you love. I mean, competing is not easy.
It certainly is not. I mean, the whole reason why I even got, to this point, and we'll probably get into this, a little bit, but ultimately, when I made the decision to become a stay-at-home dad, the reason I became a stay-at-home dad is because when I was working my corporate job, I was working a lot of hours.
Hmm.
And so when my son was born, in the beginning of 2017, for the first like few months of his life, I basically was never around. And that kind of, in a way caused a lot of issues within my household. just
Yeah.
not being around, right? And my wife and I decided to make a decision that I would stay home and do this thing, the stay-at-home dad, which I had no idea. I
Yeah.
don't even know what I was like. I don't even know what that was. I was like, I knew conceptually what it was. Like you stay home, take care of the kid, but I had no idea how much it really entailed. And obviously, as a father yourself,
Yeah.
I don't have to. I'm speaking to the choir here. You know how much that entails. And then, kind of fast forward like a year or so later, I was, I didn't have I was doing the stay-at-home dad thing, taking care of my son. Everything was great, but something was missing in my
Hmm.
life, right?
Hmm.
Because I just, because for the most part, like your job or your career was kind of like that second place that you always went to, aside from your staying, your home life,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's the second place where you spend a lot of your time. The whole idea of like, work husband or work wife. I mean, these
Yeah.
are things that exist because you spend so much time, at the workplace. And that's where you get your social, the social aspect, and also the intellectual rigor.
Hmm.
And when I didn't have that anymore, I was lost,
Yeah.
right? And so basically, during that year or so that I was a stay-at-home dad, I gained a lot of weight.
Mm.
I was trying to kind of find this activity that would allow me to kind of mimic what, my job did, but I just couldn't find it
Hmm.
until I started thinking about Jiu Jitsu again. And so late 2018 came around. I was 234 pounds,
Wow.
really, yes, I
Yeah.
know, Mi- miserable mentally, physically, not in a good place. And I said, and I think everybody goes through like a period in which there's a period in their life where they kind of have to draw a line in the sand and just say, hey,
Yeah.
I have to do something or else.
Hmm.
And that's what I did. And so I reached out to the gym that we're at now. And so, I guess I couldn't stand being this miserable. And so the beginning of 2019, I came to our gym, met the crew, and that was kind of it. And that, then the rest is, as you say, history. But I will say though, during that time, I was only, and this is where, the time that I currently go to the gym that kind of came forth is because I could only go to noon classes.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I was taking care of my son in the mornings and in the evenings. So
Mm.
they didn't really allow me a lot of time to kind of do classes in any of those periods. And there was only two gyms at the time that actually offered noon classes consistently throughout the week. And one is the gym that we're currently at now. And that
Yeah.
happened to be the first gym that I went to. And so that's kind of how it started. And then from that point, it just kind of evolved into, okay, then, you know, what's next? Like once a year or so later, I lost the weight and it's like, all right, well, what's the next thing to do? What's the next thing? And then this competitive thing, it's like, oh, competition is always something that scared the heck out of me. So let me just do this.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of dove in right into it. And that's kind of how it all kind of started. Now I've been doing 17 competitions now and
How
we just
many?
keep going. I've
Y-
done 17 competitions since beginning of 2022.
Wow, that's amazing.
No,
I mean,
it's a,
so
yeah.
in terms of like an area in your life that you've overcome, would you say that this would be one of the is it the weight thing or
It's definitely the weight thing. I mean, the
okay.
weight, yeah, my weight has always fluctuated over the years, and that was definitely something, that was kind of like a big hurdle for me to kind of overcome
Yeah.
over 20 something years. I've always fluctuated, and I've always lost the weight. Unfortunately, as you get older, you start to realize how much more difficult that is,
Yeah,
especially,
yeah.
at our age. And you kind of have to really, you know, kind of figure out exactly what you need to be doing moving forward because it's not going to get any easier,
Yeah.
right? And so with the weight and with the weight comes all these mental hurdles, physical hurdles, obviously,
Yeah.
things are just not fitting right anymore. So that's always playing in your mind,
Yeah.
right? right? And you're always thinking like, oh, people are gonna look at me funny, right,
Hmm.
because of this extra weight. Because I remember, Francis as a skinny guy when he was younger, and now he's bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
so so now it's all about like, and you always have these narratives in your mind that keep playing. And I think for me, the weight was definitely a huge piece, and that kind of affected everything, that I did. And so once I got a handle of that, I felt like I could do anything. So
Yeah.
I think that was, yeah. So
So what was the steps that you took um to sort of overcome the or to just to get rid of the weight and to
yeah,
become healthier?
yeah, that's a great question. Because it's funny because in the past I've always had these strategies and tactics, but I always went back, yo-yo dieting, as they say. You always go back to the weight that
Yeah.
you were before, because I never found anything that I could stick to. And the first thing that I did was just kind of, first you had to put in your mind that, okay, you have to admit to yourself that this is not good, right? So that
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the first thing you have to admit to yourself. It's like when like the one thing you have to admit is like, okay, I'm really heavy, and this is not good for me, for my health, for my well-being. So that's the first thing you got to do, is admit to yourself that there is a problem, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people simply just ignore it, and I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
why a lot of people
Yeah.
just don't do well, in terms of goal setting, simply
Hmm.
because it requires you to kind of look inward and actually face your ego and just say that I am deficient at this and I have to fix this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the big hurdle. That it's more mental. Before you even do any steps, it's always about admitting to yourself that there is a problem to be solved.
Hmm.
And then from that point, it's just kind of working backwards. Like, what is the outcome that you want to have, right? And then for me, it was just like, all right, well, let me start just, now that I've done that, I've joined this jujitsu gym, like, and I'm a new blue belt that it came from another gym, but I haven't trained in a long time. Like,
Hmm.
first thing first is just let me just start off very small. Let me just go a couple times a week and see how
Hmm.
that goes. Because the first thing you have to do in terms of any type of, they're trying to learn anything new or trying to get a new thing going, is to develop habits around that
Yeah.
particular thing. Because habits is the thing. The things that you do now are the things that's going to shape. It's going to predict exactly how these outcomes are going to happen, right? So the things you do every day. So if it's going to be twice a week, I am just going to commit to going a couple times a week
Hmm.
for at least a few months and just see how that goes. And you got to find, easy goals to hit. So I figured 2 days a week is a pretty easy goal to hit.
Yeah.
Once I started doing that more consistently, you start adding more. And then as pretty soon months go by, and you start to realize, okay, I'm doing four days a week,
Yeah.
then 5 days a week, right? And pretty soon it's just like habitual now. Then you start going. So that's the first step. It's just going consistently. And then you start thinking about other things that you can control, right? Because
Yeah.
it's all about the things you can control, right?
Yeah.
Now you start thinking about your eating habits. Like, what are the things that you're doing, to kind of mitigate the weight? Now that I'm working out more, I got to eat a little bit more, eat a little bit better, cleaner,
Yeah.
so you can go and survive those workouts,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that these classes put on you. And then from that point on, you start looking at your sleep habits, right? And you
Hmm.
start looking at those things, start going to bed earlier, making sure you're getting, the proper rest, so you can wake up and feel invigorated to start doing these things multiple times a week rather.
Hmm.
And then, from that point on, it's just like, you know, once you start dealing with the stuff that you can, the macro things, like things like the big things that like 90% of the solution. Then you start
Yeah.
thinking about the micro stuff, think about the vitamins you're taking, right? Are you doing any like strength and conditioning stuff, like all those small, these other things? But the most important things is just the things that you can absolutely, it's kind of like the low hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
Make sure you're consistent with your workouts. Make sure you're disciplined and going, no matter how you feel, you're still going. You're managing your sleep and you're managing your diet. I mean, those are really the big things.
And how has this impacted your emotional state?
Oh, it's amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, I always tell people is that, you know, once you start doing things, um, you know, action will always, the mood will always follow action.
Yeah.
So no matter if you start doing things, you're just going to feel more confident simply
Yeah.
because you are doing it. The one thing that the people that I hate are people who just talk about stuff and never do anything about it. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always like for me, like it was, doing this, going back to jujitsu and all those things. These are, I was very apprehensive at first, right? Because, you know, I don't know how how it's gonna turn out. Am I gonna quit again? Like I did like the last time I did jujitsu, right? Because I did quit, about, a decade earlier,
Hmm.
um, because I just, I didn't stick it out for whatever reason. I thought it was better than I actually was, so, and so once you start start doing these small steps, you become a little bit more confident, a little bit more confident. And then, then that will just change your mood, right?
Yeah.
And you just become more confident and you just become happier because you're doing these things, you're doing things that's good for you. Um, and yeah, and pretty soon you become a different person
Yeah.
after that. So it's all about, once you become confident, it's like you feel like you can do anything. It's all about taking action. That's the first thing you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So important because I think the pattern a lot of people get into is they make these promises or they have a good intention that I'm going to do this, and then they don't do it, you know, and, and
Exactly.
and then you get that self-betrayal. So you start to
Correct.
doubt yourself. And when that accumulates after a certain amount of time, that becomes like you talked about you built the confidence from taking the action. When you haven't taken the action for a certain amount of time, you start to get this feeling of that, it's just never going to work out. It doesn't
That's
happen for me. It happens for other people, but it just doesn't happen
that's
to
correct.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, man. It's crazy to just think about it. It's because I mean the if you want to do something great, it starts with these small steps, like
Yeah.
small things that will build up these confidence, and then you start building momentum. And this is something that I talk about a lot with people
Yeah.
when they're talking about jujitsu or just anything else. It's like you want to start building positive momentum, no
Mm.
matter how small things are. Like things about just if I just go a couple times a week, it doesn't seem like much in the grand scheme of things. But those are things that just plant seeds that just say, okay, I can do this 2 times a
Yeah.
week. It's not bad, right?
Yeah.
Then pretty soon you start doing three, then then you start doing other things. But ultimately, that's because and it takes courage, and that's the other thing I always talk to people, because when you're doing something new, you have to you just have to have belief that this is going to be the right path for me, right?
Yeah.
And it takes
Yeah.
a little bit of it's not just jujitsu. If you want to start anything, right? You want to start a podcast,
Yeah.
right? You want to write, you want to compete, right? You want to lose weight. If you've never done it before, you have no idea whether or not you're going to be successful or not. But you just have to have faith taking that first step, and that takes mettle, that
Yeah.
takes courage, and that takes for a lot of a better lack of takes cojones, man.
Yeah.
It takes that, what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what people require. You just have to have a little bit of faith that everything's going to work out in the end. And if you believe in your mind that it will, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Firm believer in that.
Yeah, and it's not to say that there's not going to be failures or mistakes or things like that along the way. And I'm sure you could attest to that, with the jujitsu and competing. And let's talk a little bit about that. How was your when did you start competing and going into this sort of space of uncertainty of, because there's a lot of, I haven't, I did one, one competition.
You did. You
I'm,
did.
I'm way down, like I'm a blue belt now, but I was like the adrenaline, the anxiety, the pressure. Like, how did you deal with that? You do it a lot.
Yes. Well, it's funny, man, because when I first competed, I'll tell you, February of 2022 is my first competition at purple belt, which is the rank that I had prior. And I remember Kyle Jackson. Shout out to him, Kyle Jackson, BJJ. If you're listening to this, and because he's been my coach for a long, long time, and continues to be, and he's been kind of a mentor for me up until this time. And he basically said to me before my first competition, he's like, "Listen, Francis, no matter what happens, be okay. You just have to just go in there, do the best you can, and then we just iterate from there."
Yeah.
And that's it. I lost every single match that day. I got submitted every single match. So, two ways to look at it. You say I lost every match, while my other teammates did really well, right? There's only two ways you can look at it. You can either say to yourself, "Man, I completely suck, and I shouldn't just do this again because it's not for me," or you can just say, "All right, well, logically," and just say, "All right, what are the mistakes that I made?"
Yeah.
And then they can just look at it from that point of view and just say, "Okay, so I did, I was inexperienced. I did this, this, and this, and then I'm going to do better next time." And that's what I did. And then the second competition that happened a month later, I did better. I got second in
Mhm.
that particular thing. And then pretty soon, I did, in a couple more competition, I ended up winning one.
Yeah.
In my fourth competition. So I think the adversity is, without struggle, there is no progress. So,
Yeah.
there is no way you're going to go through life without hitting any sort of adversity. Especially if this is the path that you want to take. Like, you're going to veer off somewhere. Progress is nonlinear, right? You hear that all the time. But it's about, like, just look, you got to look at it logically. And also, you have to get over yourself. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you want, I mean, that's the thing, man. And, like, some people just don't want to face, what happened. Like, I record all my matches, so I
Yeah.
saw all the mistakes that I made, and that's really hard to do, right?
Yeah.
It's to kind of face, what you're really bad at. But in order for you to progress and move forward, you have to face that stuff. And that's the one thing that I learned through that process, is that if you want to be good at anything, if you want to be the best at anything, you have to continue to put yourself out there and continue to make mistakes and just iterate as you go. You're
Yeah.
gonna fail your way to success,
Yeah.
which is always the phrase that I always like to say, simply because it's, there's no way. Life is hard. Like, no matter what you do, no matter what endeavor you're in, life is hard, and there's trials and tribulations will always follow. But if you know that this is the path that you are meant to take, and you have faith in the process that you're doing, mistakes are going to happen, as long as you face your ego, and and you don't feel that, you're not and you're learning from it, then you're going to get better and better, and then pretty soon you'll get to where you need to be going.
Yeah.
So
Is
so
this a mental attitude that you've always had throughout your life, or is it something that has comes and goes, or is it something that was new, or
yeah, it's a great question, man. I think I think I've only started doing it, this mental attitude that I currently have, it probably happened just since I started jujitsu again,
oh,
which
okay,
is funny.
yeah,
Up until, like, this point, I was always kind of like, I thought I was a pretty positive guy, but things, things in my life, haven't always been haven't been the greatest in terms of like, my career or like even jujitsu when I was
Mhm.
training it in the past.
Yeah.
Right. But I always had a terrible attitude about it. Like I always said, like it was always someone else's fault. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
always
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah.
It's never me. Right. The reason why I lost, years ago was because I was too, you know, those people, the refs screwed me, or like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was, the person was on steroids, or whatever narrative you want to put to yourself. But I never put the onus on myself,
Yeah.
right? And that was the one thing that once I, you know, it's funny now I'm learning all this stuff as I'm older now. You start to know yourself a little bit more and just realize that, listen, man, life's too short. You
Mhm.
blaming other people, man. It's like you just have to own up to it, because ultimately, no matter what happens, even if it was, you can't control everything that's going on in the world. You can't,
Mhm.
there's things that's just going to be out of your control, but you can control how you respond to it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's once I started doing jujitsu again, and as I became older, and now as a father, um, I think that's when it started to really hit me that I have to be better, right? And I think for me, and I think now I'm a much better, much more even keeled person than I ever have been. I'm much more confident in myself than I ever have been. I am much more in peace with myself versus what I've, been in the past. And I couldn't say that 10 years ago,
Yeah.
20 years ago, right? Um, and I think it just shows that, through mature, as you get older, you get more mature, you start to learn a little bit more about yourself, and your identity gets forged.
Mm.
Um, and you just know yourself, your limitations, and what you can and cannot do. And I think I'm just more comfortable in my own skin than I ever have been.
That's great because it doesn't always happen with people as they get older, because you're talking about um, taking responsibility, being accountable, like y- looking at your matches and looking at the mistakes that you've made and putting yourself out there, even risking failure and making mistakes. Whereas sometimes as we get older, there are some people who seek more security and safety in what is known. So
Right.
you can get into habits that aren't serving you, and you're not reaching your full potential, but it's the easier way. And so some people are picking that comfort zone, whereas you're going all it's like you're almost back into, there's this thing of this neuroscientist, Bo Lotto. He's great. This guy from the UK. He says that one of the most important for humans, is struggle, and also part of that is facing uncertainty. So if you want to build new things or do new things or grow, you have to go into this place, stepping outside of your comfort zone. But humans don't like uncertainty because it goes against that primal survival mechanism, that part of us that wants to keep safe. But he says children are able to go out into uncertainty all the time because they use play to do it. They don't take themselves, you said it, like so seriously. They kind of get over so I mean it's really incredible that you are going in this like place of uncertainty in this way, whereas it's not always so easy for people to do.
I mean, and and people, and I get all that, and I was like that as well for the longest time. And I think for me, it's always been like, I don't want to wake up one day, you know, 20 years, 30 years from now, 40 years, whatever it is, and just say that I was just scared to do something. I didn't want to wake up and, the one thing that frightens me more than anything is to be the same person next year that I am, just what I am now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That scares me more than anything, because you just don't evolve.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as if you're living, if you're breathing, you have a chance to turn your life around. and to be better person. I just don't, because there's people out there who've just they're alive, but they're basically been doing the same thing for like, 50 years or so,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
haven't really evolved, which is, I feel like that's a shame, it's a shame in a way, because they're
yeah,
going to wake up one day and just say, wow, I wish I could have done X, Y, and Z. But now, my time is limited, and not to say that they can't do those things now, but it's going to be much more challenging.
yeah,
So I think just for me, I think it's just, I don't know, man. I just can't see myself not continuing to push, what I can do. Because it's funny, man. It's like, especially as a jiu-jitsu competitor, and like I know I'm past my, I'm not a 28-year-old
yeah,
athlete. I'm very much aware of that. I'm not going to be going and win the adult world championships or any of that stuff. That's not really why I do it. I compete just to challenge myself and to push my
yeah,
boundaries to see what I could do. And that's what I want to continue to do until that day where I can't really do it anymore.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
ultimately, I just want to be able to wake up and be proud of the canvas that is my life.
yeah.
Yeah, because life is really short. Like if you think about it, there's only now when especially when you're talking about careers and you're taking care of your family and stuff. Sometimes you forget like how to do things for yourself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right. And so, for me, I'm just been very fortunate and very lucky that I'm able to do these things, and kind of do this this thing. And by the way, I have no idea where this is going to lead.
hmm,
Is it going to lead to, like, I don't know, some sort of teaching thing, or
yeah,
I have no idea. But that's kind of, it gets, and that's the other thing. I just don't think too far into the future
hmm,
about these things. I'm just very present and
yeah. That's
dealing with
great.
things, because I used to be that person to just think about, oh my God, what am I gonna, how are you gonna make money doing jujitsu? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's just not, that's just not even something that I'm even considering,
yeah,
because I'm just having way too much fun doing what I'm currently doing right now, taking care of my son and
yeah,
taking care of my family and just doing that. So it's all about, for me, it's, I don't really look too far ahead, but I know for a fact that I just want to continue to evolve and continue to push my limits, and see where this goes, man. You know.
yeah. And that's
So
yeah, well said. So I'm
yeah,
gonna do um if you're in agreement, I'm gonna do three rapid fire questions. I do this with my guests.
of course.
Okay. So first one, if you could time travel to any era, past or future, where would you go and why?
Ooh, that is a great question. That is a great question. If I can go back in time, I'm gonna have to think about this. Let me see. Maybe, I don't know. I would go back to 1994. Because I'm a big Knicks fan, and that was the last time the Knicks were in the MV. Well, actually, it was 1999, but the last time the Knicks were in the playoffs. But I want to go back to 1994, when the Knicks were actually had the opportunity to win the
Yeah.
NBA championship against Houston, and I would somehow miraculously tell John Starks to pump fake Hakeem Olajuwon and but and make that jump and make that jumper. So and hopefully make and win that game 7. I was actually in my senior prom listening to that game, and it was terrible. So
Yeah.
that was horrible.
It's so funny you said that because after I said that, I was thinking, after I read the question, I was thinking, I would like to go back to the when the Bulls were in the with Jordan in the that championship
Yeah,
series. So we were both thinking basketball.
yeah, exactly. Because I love it's my favorite sport in the world. So,
Mine too. What's one piece of advice you wish you could give to your younger self?
oh, great question, man. There's so many. But I think the one that I would probably tell myself, and go back to younger Francis, is to just keep going, which is
Yeah.
actually a hashtag that I put in a lot of my social media posts. Um, it's just the idea of, like, no matter what happens in your life, no matter what trials and tribulations come, no matter what adversity comes your way, the storm will eventually pass,
Yeah.
and you just want to be ready to capitalize on it when it does. And when I say to keep going, it's just to keep moving forward no matter what. Um, because if that was the case, I'd probably be a black belt already
Yeah.
because I missed just so much time. Just stopping and starting and stopping and starting again and quitting and putting all these narratives in my mind that I wasn't good enough or it
Yeah.
wasn't my
Yeah.
fault. And instead of just focusing on myself and just say, dude, just do the work, man.
That's it. Do the work.
That's do the work, man.
Yeah.
That's it.
What's the weirdest talent or skill you possess that really nobody knows about or
Weird talent. Weird talent. Let me see. I'm gonna have to think about that. Besides my jujitsu, my amazing jujitsu skills, let me see. What is a weird talent? Um,
doesn't have to be weird.
that's a weird talent. Well, I was really good at video games when I was young,
Okay.
and so I was really into it. But I stopped probably when I was in college. I was pretty good. I was really into it, and once the next generation of video game platforms came out, I just stopped really playing. But I was really really good when I was young.
Yeah.
So I guess if this was another timeline or something, I probably would have been like a professional like gamer or something like that.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think
What was your
I was
favorite?
pretty. Oh my goodness, there's so many. I was really into Mortal Kombat, so I would
Oh
be
yeah.
very good. I'd be very good at
Yeah. Yeah.
that. So yeah, so
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
I loved video games too. I think my favorite was I really liked Max Payne,
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Call of Duty, like the original Max Payne.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad I stopped because, as you know, the hours fly by when you're playing video games. There'll be no jujitsu, no time for jujitsu.
Well, it's funny. People get paid to play video games now, so
Yeah,
it's
I
like
know.
there's
A lot of money too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's a little, I wish I was born a little bit later. I probably wouldn't be able to capitalize
Yeah.
on that. On that. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, but video games for sure. So
great. So that ends our rapid fire. And Francis, it's been a delight speaking with you today. Like, it was really inspiring for me because you gave some advice that I think it would be beneficial for a lot of people out there because um, taking action, not taking yourself too seriously, you know, we all have, I believe we all have, we're born with gifts. There's things that, and by gifts, I don't mean that, everyone has to be an NBA basketball player or whatever, but just bringing your full, authentic self into the world and into what you do, whether it's competing in jujitsu or being, a parent who's providing for their family or, whatever it is you're doing in life. I think the important thing is that you're continuing to grow and to put yourself out there. And I think there is something to showing up authentically. I think to be able to do that is you have to go through struggle because you come against those part of yourselves that you keep kind of hidden away.
yeah,
Yeah, those fears come up, those anxieties, you come to that threshold and you're either gonna run away and go back to that safety sort of comfort zone and not put yourself out there in the world, or you're gonna take that leap. And like you're a perfect example of that because like you said, you have this joy about you. It sounds like you're enjoying life. I mean, it's really the attitude that you come into at the school, introducing yourself to people. Um, you have this positive mental attitude and the energy about you. And I think that is because you're putting yourself out there, you're challenging yourself. And I'm watching, I got to get back into this competing thing because there's really no excuse.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it in the head, and I think kind of just a final thought. It's just like authenticity. You mentioned that just right now, and that's exactly why I think people resonate with me. Even in social media, I have people reach out to me just on things that I posted. Right?
Yeah.
There's like this stuff that you sent out. People I've never met would just reach out to me randomly, just like, I love the stuff you posting. Just keep doing that, and I think it's amazing. And I think it just goes back to what you were saying before. Is just being authentic.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that um, I think I think that's the downfall for a lot of folks is that they just follow the crowd. They want to be somebody else instead of just being themselves. And because the fact of the matter is that people want to be liked, right? People
Yeah.
want to be embraced. People want to be friends with everyone, right? Because they don't want any conflict. But the truth of the matter is that if you are liked by everyone, you are loved by no one. I think there's a
Yeah.
quote that actually says that is that and the only way that you're truly going to be loved, by people who actually, is really just to be authentic, to be yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I tried to do,
Yeah.
is to just put myself out there no matter what. And God knows, I'm sure I have haters out there, being too, whatever, they hate my posts, what I mean? They're
Yeah.
too positive, what I mean? Or whatever the case is. But I simply just don't care. I mean, those are the people you don't care, about their opinions anyway, because no
Yeah.
matter what, haters will be around. You just gotta find your niche, be authentic, and then the right people, and you will attract the right people to you. So, and
Yeah.
that's always been my thing.
Great.
Yeah,
Well, thank you, Francis. Thank you for joining us today. It's been
yeah,
a pleasure.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hi, I hope you enjoyed the episode with Francis Dimayuga. He covered a lot of things that were um, inspiring to me, being someone that for a good part of my life has been on the opposite end of the spectrum that he talks about. When he talked about venturing into that place of uncertainty and taking action. A lot of times I would stay in that safe zone, and I know a lot of others do that as well. And what ends up happening is you start to live a life of, I wonder what could have been if I would have stuck with that, or if I would have taken a leap into the uncertainty and just, went for the things that I wanted to do. We can easily rationalize our way out of something to stay in that safe zone. And, as we get older, or as I get older, I'm more and more having the attitude of, what do I have to lose? And it's going to try the things out and make mistakes, and maybe I'll fail at things. And one of the things he also said is to get over yourself, and how ego can really get in the way of evolving, of being our authentic selves, of taking a risk, because maybe we're afraid of what other people will think if we fail, or if we look stupid, or or silly, or if we make mistakes, and or what that would mean about us. Maybe you feel this sense of not good enough, so you don't want to challenge yourself and fail at something, because, oh, that means I'm not good enough because I failed. And no, that's not true. As when you're a child and you're crawling and you're learning to walk, you're gonna fall down plenty of times, but that doesn't mean the child isn't good enough. It's all part of the process of learning. And I'm saying all this because, for my audience, and for, anyone that this is helpful to, but also to myself, because I'm currently in that phase of jumping out into the unknown. This podcast is part of that. I don't know where it's going to go or where it's going to lead, but it's something that I'm enjoying, and I'm learning so much from my guest, and Francis being one of them. So hope you got something out of this podcast. And if you like this podcast, please like it or comment, in the comment section, and please subscribe, whether you're watching this on Spotify, YouTube, or Instagram. Join the Instagram, comment, and
As we
share.
propel
Thank you.
ourselves out of this stage of reality, out of this polarity, out of this aggression, out of this confinement, out of this division and collision, out of this, and into this place of love. This love where we are bringing down the energy from above and bringing up the energy from below and meeting in the middle. This place of, I don't know.